Okay, so welcome to task 6, which is Invaders from Space. For legal reasons, it's not Space Invaders. So we're going to start by making a new monogame project as usual. A lot of the stuff that we're doing here is going to be very similar to stuff we've done previously, so I might go a little bit quicker this time, with the exception of the parts that you haven't seen me do yet. So monogame for Windows project, I'm going to call it something reminiscent of Space Invaders. First thing we're going to do is a bunch of boilerplate code to set up things like the resolution and whatnot. So with the game1.cs. But this time I'm going to do it here in what's called the constructor method. The constructor method is called that because it's used to construct an object of the class type. So we're currently in a class called game1, and the constructor is also called game1. It has the same name, and that's how it knows it's a constructor. This is the code that runs whenever you create a game of this type, which is done, of course, in program. Program says new game1. So that runs. What it's really doing is calling this method here. You'll notice it doesn't have any override keyword. It doesn't have void or integer or any kind of return type. That's because the class itself is the return type. It returns an object of that class. And in doing so, there's a couple of things that are built in. It sets up the graphics device, initializes the root folder for content to load from. We can set up the graphics here as well. The preferred back buffer width to, let's make it 1024, and the preferred back buffer height to 768. Normally we would do graphics.apply changes here, but because we're doing it in the constructor, we can skip that step. The graphics settings haven't been applied, and as soon as it initializes the graphics device, it will do that for us anyway, so we don't need to do it now. I think I might initialize the game with the mouse being visible just so I can point at stuff. You probably don't need to do that, but it might make it handy for this video. We're also going to add an existing class. Don't add it to the solution. The solution is a combination of all of the projects in your game. The project being, of course, the invasion game. So add to the project. So right click, add existing item. And we're going to find a sprite class. So let's look at a previous project. What did we do last? Brick Breaker. There's a sprite class. Let's grab that and just have a quick look, make sure it's the one we want. Texture, vector, color, update hitbox. I can bounce. We don't really need that for this game, but it's there. Everything we need is there. Now the thing is, it's in a namespace which relates to our previous game, Give Me a Break. Now I can change that. I can make it go to the Invasionators namespace, same as game 1. And if I take a step back and undo that, Control Z. If I don't do that and I try and create a sprite object, the IntelliSense doesn't notice that there is a sprite object, so it tries to make it sprite batch instead, and it won't quite work. We could say use that namespace dot sprite, and that will work, but it doesn't look right. We've got a different project name in our project, and that's kind of weird. So we could change that to Invasionators, make it match the same namespace as here. We can then call it up and use a sprite. Alternatively, and the method I'm going to apply here, is to give it a generic name, in this case sprite library. So it still doesn't match the namespace here, but it makes a bit more sense if you say sprite library.sprite. Also, we could just put in sprite, cancel the drop down by using escape, and then fix it by putting in a using command up here, using sprite library. I think it's a more elegant solution because now you can reuse that sprite library in other projects the same way, and it's going to be consistent. Okay, so the first thing we're going to make is a sprite. It's going to be the tank. And I guess we'll need to add the content now. And the monogame pipeline hasn't, I don't think it's loaded the content builder file properly, so let's just go ahead and do that. We'll look for it. Under dev, no, sorry, I did it in mono, didn't I? Mono Veilmeters content. This happens from time to time. We need to load up the content first for some reason. So we're going to add existing items, which I have tucked away in a folder. Called Invaders Content. Now here's a font. This is done in a fancy format using Sprite Font 2 package, which I hope to have time to show you later. There's a few images and sounds, some of which I made myself, some of which I sourced online from free sources. So if we add all them in, make sure you use copy, and we're going to change that font, because that font there, if I double click it, you can see it's a fancy font. Got blue or yellow options, but it's coloured. You've got blue and red, yellow and red mixed together. For that to work, this is a PNG file, portable network graphic, and for that to work we need to change the way that's processed. It's currently imported as a texture, that's fine. It's also processed as a texture, and what we need to do is change that to process it as a sprite font, sorry, a font texture, beg your pardon. And that will automatically look for those purple gaps, which represent the transition from one glyph, they call it, in the font, one glyph to the next. You notice some of the glyphs are missing, but inside each glyph there's a transparent section and a non-transparent section, so that's how it knows what to draw. Okay, that's also the same method you use, by the way, if you want to switch an MP3 into a sound effect, or switch a WAV file into a song. But that's our content, good to go. Let's go to the load content method. I'll take out the comment telling us to load the content because we're about to do that. Load the tank image in. I think I just called it tank, didn't I? Let's just double check that. Yeah, capital T, but that doesn't actually matter in a file name. That's the only place it doesn't really matter. So load the tank image in, and let's go down to draw and do sprite batch.begin, sprite batch end. I tend to put them two together, and then in between draw the tank image with the tank position and the tank color tint. If you're on that right now, you won't see much, but you should see the tank. Rookie mistake. That was a debug error you saw, sorry, a runtime error you saw there. Tank was null because I forgot to initialize it to a new sprite. And that is another constructor, so we put in brackets. Okay, there's our tank. Spot on graphics, of course. Now you want to place it in the middle bottom of the screen. So in your initialize, we could put in here tank position. It's going to be a new vector. The x-axis is going to be the viewport, graphics device viewport width, which is all the way across the screen, so divide that by 2 to get halfway across the screen. But we want to position the middle of the tank in there, so take the tank's image width, half that, and take that away. That gives you your x-axis. And then on the y-axis we want the bottom of the screen. And bring it back onto the screen, so it's not just off the screen, by bringing it back the same number of pixels as the tank is tall. Let's throw in a few extra pixels just so it's not touching the bottom of the screen. What have I done now? Ah, right. So this is happening because the tank's image has not been loaded. The tank's image has not been loaded because it does that during base.initialize. Base.initialize actually calls up load content. So we just simply cut and paste that line and put it underneath base.initialize. Changes the order. I'll put in a wee breakpoint so you can actually see this happening. So when I run it, base.initialize jumps. It didn't. Did I press the wrong key there? I think I must have stepped over it instead of stepped into it. Base.initialize, let's make sure I hit the right button. Step into. I'll just need to put another breakpoint in here. Okay, so it's called up load content. When it's finished there, it comes back to base.initialize and carries on where it left off. And at this point now it has an image and it can get the width of the image and use that. It's also quite valid to do this kind of thing at the end of your load content if you want. It doesn't really matter too much. It's just a conceptual difference. Alright, so that does put our tank at the bottom of the screen. Some more basic gameplay here. We're going to check the status of the keyboard. And if the left key is pressed down, tank accelerates on the x-axis negatively, so towards the left. Copy and paste that, make it the right key, make it add on acceleration. Use that acceleration to change its position. And don't forget to apply a little bit of friction. Something like that. 95% speed maintained. Oh, way too much. Or way too little friction rather. You could mess about with the speed or the friction, whatever you'd like to get the gameplay feel that you like. I suspect that's probably too much acceleration, but you can play about with those numbers all you want to get exactly what you want. Let's stop it going off the screen. In fact, I'll give it a small margin at the edge of the screen. Left hand side's fairly easy. Right hand side a little bit more difficult because you can't just put in 1024. We can, I've done it again, graphics device, not just graphics. Get the viewport width, that should be 1024, so I just said we can't just use that. What do? Take away tank image width. And the same margin, if we are using any margin. When you go past that edge, we set it to that edge. So I'm just going to copy and paste, it's the exact same pixel you want. And then run it. Voila, we have a tank. Step 1. Next, let's make a sprite for the player's bullet. I'm only going to make one player bullet at a time. We're sticking sort of to the original Space Invaders style. So we'll fire one bullet at a time. Load in the bullet's image. And what did I call it? Was it beam, I think? Yeah, beam.png. The .png is missed out because we're not loading it exactly by file name, we're loading it by asset name, and the asset name is it strips away the .png or whatever it is when it compiles it into it actually compiles it into an XNB file, but let's not dwell on that for now. Because it gets ignored, it just strips away the file type. Okay, so we've got the image in, let's draw it. Copy and paste, always helpful. And if we run that, we will see it in the top left corner, the 0, 0 point. We don't want that, so let's go to initialize. and set up the player billet dot position. I'm just going to make it off screen, 1000 pixels off the top of the screen, minus 1000. And I'll explain why, or maybe it might become obvious why as we go on. So let's let the player fire it. Excuse me. Let's use the space key. Press the space key, the player billet resets its position to be, well, we'll start with the tank's position. It's not right, but you should see what's happening. Press the space, and what happens is the billet moves to the top left corner of the billet, beg your pardon, moves to the top left corner of the tank. That's not what we want. So take that tank position and add on a vector consisting of the width of the tank divided by 2 minus the player's billet width. Oops. Image width divided by 2. So the middle of the billet goes in the middle of the tank. On the y-axis we want to move it up the screen, so that's a negative value, equal to the height of the billet, not the height of the tank, because the billet is the thing we're moving up. Okay, so if we run that, it might be off by 1 pixel. That's probably just because my lack of talent at graphics rather than coding. Also, the billet just kind of, every time you press space or hold space down, it follows you around. It's not moving yet. So let's deal with that. I guess we should, during the initialize, give the billet a velocity. And move it 5 pixels per frame up the screen, minus on the y-axis. So player billet dot position gets changed by the player billet dot direction every frame. No friction, keeps on going. So as soon as you let go of the spacebar, it travels up the screen, but as soon as you press it again, it teleports back. That's another thing we want to avoid. Only reset it once it's off the screen. So we combine this condition here, have you press the spacebar, we combine it with a check for the player billet's Y position, check if it's less than, let's make it say minus 100. It's going to be plenty of pixels off screen at that point. So now, no matter whether you hold down the spacebar, it won't fire another one until the last ones went significantly off screen. There's your bullets. But how about the aliens? Well, we could use an array. We've done that before. We can use sprite array for aliens. We can use sprite array, 80 of them. A one-dimensional array, 80 aliens. Loop through, create 80 aliens, loop through, load 80 aliens, loop through, move 80 aliens, etc. Could work. It has a few flaws with it. Like for instance, when you choose an alien, when you remove an alien from it, it gets shot. What do we do? Do we just move it off screen? Do we put in a new boolean to tell it that it's been killed? Whatever way you go about it, there's going to be some knock-on effect. If you move it off screen, you have to take that into account when you're checking if any aliens have hit the edges to turn back. If you put in a boolean to check that it's alive, you need to run that check every time you do a collision. It's fine as long as you remember to do it, but it is a bit of extra programming overhead. Incidentally, we could also make it a two-dimensional array. We could put a comment in there and say instead it's going to be 40 by, what would it be? 8 by 5. That's 40 aliens. So you got 8 per row and 5 per column. You could do that. You could make it an array of arrays. Like that. And that has the advantage where it's not fixed in size to 8 by 5. You could take one of those arrays and recreate it. It doesn't really fix the problem though, because every time you remove an alien, you need to copy all those aliens into a new array. So there's approaches to it, but I'm going to go for a list. Now when you make a list, you might find that you have to put in a using command to give you access to it. Also, when you make a list, you have to put in angle brackets to tell it what you're making a list of. This is called a generic. So in this case, it's a list of sprites. and we call it aliens, and we're going to initialize it as a new list of sprites. It's an empty list right now, but that's no problem. While I'm at it, we're going to be randomizing these, so let's put in a randomizer. Doesn't recognize that either. Put in the using command, and eventually, yep, there it goes, it turns blue. We're going to call it the random number generator. And when you type in new random, what it does is it seeds the random number generator, making it ready to produce a stream of random or pseudo random numbers. Okay, it's probably about time we started tidying this up. So let's take the tank's position and extract that to a method called spawn tank, because we're going to have to redo that every time you kill the player. I'll also make a spawn aliens. Let's make a spawn alien wave, something like that. That doesn't exist yet, so let's generate it. Take out the exception, because we're about to put the code in to do it. So first thing I'm going to do is make a texture 2D. I'm going to call it alien image. So load in the invader image, I think it's called. Why have I done that here? So this is a local texture, only exists inside these curlies here. But that's fine, because this is the only place where we want to use it. We want to create a new alien with that image, so we only need that image when we're creating the alien. And it will stay in memory because the garbage collector will realise that this texture here is used elsewhere. We're going to give it a spacing between one alien and the next of 60 pixels on the x-axis, 60 pixels on the y-axis in between them, and also a margin so that they're not bang up against the edges of the screen at the start of the game. 10 pixels from the left, 60 pixels from the top of the screen. Now here's where the random comes into it. It's just really a sort of introduction to randomization. We're going to select a colour for all the aliens. So we make our own colour, which is going to be, we're going to use the randomizer to choose the next number from 0 to 255. That's for the red value. Next we choose the green up to 255, and finally the blue, which I'm only going to make up to 100 so that we don't accidentally get the same colour as the background. So there we go, 3 random numbers, 3 separate numbers, which are all next in the random number generator's sequence. So it generates the next random number for us, for red, green and blue. Simple as that really for the RNG. There's a few things to mention about it, which I'll do when I get to the PowerPoint at the end. So now that we have that, we are going to do 2 loops, one inside the other. First along the x-axis from 0 to 10, and secondly along the y-axis from 0 to 6. So yes, this code is going to run 60 times. 60 times we're going to make a new sprite. And that sprite is going to have the position on the x-axis, that's left to right, which is going to be the same as the number, the alien number, or the row, the column number, I suppose you could say. So column number x, which is 0 to 10, space them out by that amount of spacing, and add on the margin so that they don't get stuck in the left. As you can imagine, the y coordinate is basically the same. And the image is the alien image we loaded earlier. The direction, we're going to start them off up moving positively along the x-axis, so that's to the right. And finally the colour that we selected. So it's going to use the same selected colour for all 60 aliens, they're not going to be multicoloured, don't worry. Finally, with that alien, we then add it to the list. There's the list, aliens. When you hit dot, you can see all the things you can do with the list. Add a whole bunch, check the capacity before it has to change the size of the list. You can index them, you can remove things, etc. But what we want is the simple add command, because it's a command that needs brackets, and it needs to know which sprite we're going to add. It's the new invader. So spawn alien wave should create 60 aliens for us in our list. You must of course have the call to that function somewhere. I've done it initially. Alright, now in the draw method I'm going to use a for each loop. For each sprite, I'll call it S in the aliens. Sprite batch.draw S image and S position with S tint. We can use for each safely because we're iterating through the list and not changing anything. And there we are, 60 aliens. Not moving, but they're all there. Also, no collision yet. So let's get them moving. Go to the update. Update's already starting to get quite lengthy, so let's refactor it a bit. We'll move all the player controls out. We'll handle the player's input here. And the bullet moves, and then the aliens move. So X goes from 0 to we're going to make it count the number of aliens we've got left. So there should be 60 initially. But if we use count, why did I'll press C now. If we use count instead of 60 in there, then we'll avoid the problem where once we kill an alien it goes down to 59 and that would make it crash. So if we tell it to count how many are left, it'll always do the right number. As we do so, aliens with that index, because it's treated just like an array, a list. In fact, it is really an array. Its position changes by its direction. That should get moving, simple as that. But moving is not all we want. We want them to turn back when they hit the edge. So a sort of naive approach to that would be to say, well, after they've moved, check that alien, that one alien we've just moved, one at a time, and if its position, we'll start with the x-axis, if it goes past the edge in the x-axis, the left, sorry, then we change direction by multiplying it by -1. So a negative becomes a positive and vice versa. And we change its position on the y-axis to move down 20 pixels. Do the same thing for the right hand side of the screen. We should really work this out properly using graphics device viewport width minus aliens x image width. So when they hit the edge of the screen they turn back. Sounds reasonable at first blush, but when we run it you'll see it's not what we want. A lovely choice of colour there, RNG. Yeah, so that's not what we want. It's kind of cool, but it's wrong. So let's think again. How about every time we hit an edge, we look through the aliens again, so we change them all, move them all back. And mold down and change direction. So have a different iterator this time as we go through, but still goes through all the aliens that we count. Put the code in here instead. Oh, of course, yes, I'm missing something. We need to make it I instead of X here. So instead of just reversing that one alien, we look through all of them, make them all reverse. So do the same thing for the other edge. Sounds a bit better. It's closer to what we want. But if you pay attention, after a little while they start getting separated, because it's sort of halfway through checking these aliens. When it hits one of the edges, it says, oh, that number 10 alien has hit the edge, but all 10 of these aliens have moved by that point. So when they switch direction, the rest of them end up going the other way, but the first row have already moved, so they're kind of going the wrong way now. But only for one frame. However, that does add up, as you can see, over time. So there's a bunch of ways you can solve that, but what I'm going to do is instead of making them all reverse direction immediately, just create a boolean. And let's call it switch direction. We assume that we're not going to switch direction because most of the time we won't. But we'll just say in here, I'm going to cut this instead of delete it. But what we say in here is if any alien hits that edge, actually in this case we do want to switch direction. And the same for the other edge. So now that you've finished that loop, we can then say, well, hold on, do we want to switch direction? And if we do, then we do that for loop, which I've just pasted in. Let's check if that works. Nice. That's what we're after. By the way, you might have noticed that I've just put the variable name in there because it's a boolean. Booleans evaluate to booleans, so that's fine. Basically the same as saying this though, if switch direction is true. But that's optional, we don't need to do that comparison. Okay, now that's our aliens moving. I guess we should be able to do collisions now. I'll not do the collision with a bullet just yet, but we'll put in lives. And also a font to draw them in. Should really put in a comment next to our alien name. And I can use the English spelling of colour because I get to choose it. Okay, so oops, one tank as well. Where was I? Yeah, we went to do collisions. So we've got lives and we've got a font. Let's load the font. Oh, what did I call the font? All your base. Okay. I'm going to draw the lives on the screen using that font. Spikebatch.draw string. So draw with main font the text which consists of the word lives followed by a live variable. And the position we're going to draw it in, just do it in the top left corner, maybe a few pixels in. And no tint, so it's white. On that, you should see our fancy font saying live 0. Oh yes, so the glyphs match up to capital and lowercase, so to keep it consistent, draw all in caps or all lowercase. Okay, live 0. And like I said, we're going to do the collision with the player and the alien first. I'm good about minimising stuff as it's starting to get a bit long in the tooth, the code now. But there's the update. So tank, tell it to update the hitbox. And then go through all the aliens. As we do so, we tell the aliens at that, or the alien at that position to update its hitbox as well. And then check if the tank hitbox intersects with that alien's hitbox. If it does, we do a couple of things. Aliens.remove, we'll remove at position X. So what that does is that number there, X, which starts at 0 and goes up to 59, that's the number of the alien we're currently looking at. And if that alien hits the tank, that's the alien we remove. alien number X. So we're moving at index number 0 or index number 59 or whatever it happens to be, the one that hits the player. But I put in square brackets like a noob. There we go. Remove at as a method, so it uses round brackets. Let's lose a life. And now here's the weird bit, because we've got, let's say, 60 aliens there first. We remove them, we now have 59 aliens, but it's still going to count to 60, so that'll cause it to crash. Also, when you remove alien, let's say it's alien 15 as the player, so X is 15. When you remove alien number 15, everything moves up one index, so alien number 16 becomes 15, but we move on to 17. So we skip one. So to solve both those problems in one go, we just take one step back. That's going to cancel that out, and we'll go back to the what's now becoming the next alien in the list. Okay, but we don't actually have any lives, so let's make lives equals 3 just for testing purposes, and we'll leave it running for a few moments and we should see that working. Anytime now, no hurry at all. There we go. Bingo. Now when it goes into negative numbers, you get that weird symbol because it doesn't have the right glyph for the minus sign in that font. But we shouldn't ever need to use a minus sign anyway, so we can ignore that for the moment. And I think that'll do for now.